Hey there guys, today I'm going to be showing you how to rebuild the Kangertech sub-ohm tank. I've got a pretty used coil in there, and that's the 1.2 ohm one. I've managed to find an easy way of rebuilding that. So without further ado, let's get down to the rebuild. So basically, first thing, you can see that the old coil is pretty gunked inside. The first thing you do is get off that lower pin, set it aside, take off that rubber grommet, take that aside, and now there's really two ways of doing this from here. Is that you can basically either choose to unscrew the top part from the lower part, which is kind of hard but less damage to the coil, or the other way I discovered to get the coils out from the bottom without pretty much damaging the coil. So what you need to do is grab your screwdriver. There's those small pins down there. Just push in the wire from the coil, sorry, you push in the coil from down there towards the bottom till you end up with those legs showing up. And what you need to do is take your tweezers and try to grab both of the legs. Make sure that you have both of the legs, and then the trick about that is that you quickly remove this. So one quick push and the actual coil is out. As you can see, the coil is actually pretty gunked up, but it's pretty much intact. It can be used and reused. I've used those coils and rebuilt them for around 4 times already. So yeah, next step is to basically take your cotton out, and that is by unscrewing. What I tend to do is use or twist them while getting them out so that they don't mess up the coil. And there you go, that's the cotton out. And yeah, there is the coil, pretty much intact, pretty much no problems with it at all. Now you can't really clean this by the heating it up in the mod and then with water on it. What I normally do is torch it and then give it a clean torch, put it under water, and then space them out a bit. So that's the coil. I'm gonna be cleaning the coil, and we'll get back with a clean coil. So we're back with the cleaned coil, and as you can see, much better now, much cleaner, and that's only after torching it. So the next step now is to prepare the old coil for the insertion. So I'll take my 3mm screwdriver, wrap the legs, or make sure that the legs are straightened up for when it's inserted. You might see that this is a small place where the wire bends. You can take your tweezers and straighten that up. Just the gentle pushes. Straighten your coil. Make sure you've got the correct spacing, and there you go. That's a clean, straight up coil. For the insertion part, it's quite the reverse. I would actually also clean that housing up and do it. I actually forgot to clean that, so I'll be back. So I'm back after cleaning up the coil, and as you can see, That was the amount of shit inside the coil for cleaning, and that is now clean. Right. So the next thing I do is the wicking part, which is a quite interesting thing. I've been trying different methods of wicking this stuff. Now, if you use a higher VG or 60 plus, you basically don't need to do to stick the wicks outside that hole. But if you're using like me 60 plus, and what you need to do is quite interesting really, is you need to cut it straight at this hole, but you need to make sure you stuff enough cotton in there that it basically would look like the coil is sitting there and have a small cotton ball here and a small cotton ball there, and it's just straight flush with the hole. So what I basically do is, first of all, grab the coil, make sure the legs are close to each other, and basically drop the coil in there. Do not try to force it in there. If it doesn't go easily, just wiggle it around and it should be in. I actually have one leg is outside. So quite happens a lot when you're trying to insert the legs in there and you end up with one leg outside that frame. Just push it in and there you go, springs back in place. Now with those two legs in there, you can quite put a screwdriver right across the coil to it goes from the other side. And once it's done that, you have the other, you can just push up those legs up just a little bit. Do not use too much force. And that's what happens. So I've got to adjust that again. You put it through here, straightening things up. Make sure you tie the legs just together. That'll make things a bit easier. Spacing is really key here. That's why I'm basically taking my time and reviewing it again. Once you have that straightened, just give it a small push on both of the legs, tie them up together just like so. Reinsert them. Into there. Make sure your legs doesn't stick out again. Push, and it's out. Now after we straighten this, what I normally tend to do, so you can either take your existing screwdriver or have this part off and just place your coil facing the sides. Don't use too much pressure, and if you can see, the coil is now in place with those leads outside. So what I tend to do is separate the leads from each other. Now they're separated. All you need to do next, you always have to keep that plastic part in there, otherwise your coil will be messed up. Just put one lead out, one lead in, into the grommet. Fit it in. That's good enough. Now take your tweezers, bend one, bend the other, and then you take that center pin, insert it in here, and all that time just keep that piece of plastic in there. And the next thing is to basically cut the excess, and the way I cut the excess so that it doesn't actually interfere is that I push into that rubber grommet a bit, give it a cut so that it's not sticking out in any way. You can feel that. Same with the other side. Yeah, good. So that's the coil. Onto the re-wicking part, which basically I cut off this amount. Even that's a bit bigger. So about that thick, just about same thickness as the coil itself. And I skin that very thin part so that you get the fluffiness of the coil, of the cotton. Same with the other part. Just don't take too much away, and that should be enough. Now turn it like that, and that now you can remove this. As you can see, the coil is still in there. Insert that through the sides and through your coil. Push from one side. You kind of want to let it be not very loose, but you can still feel the tension on it. Now here's the other part of it, is that you basically need to stuff enough cotton in there, but not too much cotton, into the hole so that it forms like a small ball from inside. So what I do is I take a screwdriver, push in a circular way, and I look, and then I push again. So as you can see, it's got a small ball in there. I do quite the same with the other side, circularly inserting it in there. The reason you do a bit much is that we are gonna fluffen that after the cut. So that's how it looks like. Now what I do, cut exact, and take one of my rebuilding wires because they are, and then as you can see I just fluffen it a bit. Same with the other side, I fluffen it a bit. And there you go. Now it's time to change. I've got that on my DNA 30. I've got an 0.5 coil in here, which I will change also pretty soon. I've done the same exact thing with that coil. If you do the quick nudge of the coil when you're getting it out, you should be able to use the coil many times. Yeah. Now when you do that, put that back in here. What you need to make sure is this passes gently and smoothly, and that's because we've got the excess leads. Screw that in. Of course, as usual, use your ohm meter, and there you go, 1.19 to the spot because we're basically reusing the same coil. Enjoy it.